Welcome to the Resource Podcast. Today we're going to be speaking about money, finances, and all of those fun things, and having a conversation about why I'm passionate about having that conversation, where I lacked having that conversation, and I suppose what I've done in the way of educating myself to be able to show up better in that kind of capacity. So the expert that I want to have speaking about this, I think it's really important when it comes to finances and money and having that conversation is to start basic. Where I lacked the education was the basic education. I've since had the conversation with friends and family talking about how we didn't have any financial education. We didn't even talk about budgeting in high school. And I've had a friend of mine who's actually a high school teacher who said to me, Becky, you do have budgeting education. It's just in year 10. I have a belief that year 10, I don't know about anybody else, don't know about you, but I wasn't paying attention to finances in year 10. So for me, it's really important to have that basic start. And so I'm going to be having our next guest expert on to speak about it from, it's not necessarily energetics, it's not necessarily speaking about it in any other way. It's literally talking about the numbers, speaking about budgeting, and speaking about what you can do with your money when it's coming in so you're not living paycheck to paycheck. The guest that I'm going to be having on speaking about that is Nigel Hamilton, who's in corporate banking. So he speaks about it flawlessly. He can speak about the things that are simple when it comes to money, but he can also go into depth speaking about the things that can be difficult for people. So I'm really excited for you guys to have that conversation with me, and I would love to hear if you have any questions in regards to having Nigel on the podcast. I have a belief that people struggle with managing money for that exact reason. We don't necessarily get taught educational basics around finances or money. Unless you're brought up in a family that has money and manages money, then you don't necessarily have that education. And the biggest thing for me when I'm having these conversations that sticks out in my mind when we're talking about this is you get taught you can't have these conversations at the table. And one of those things are money. And the thing that I grew up hearing was it's common to talk about money. Whereas as a 39-year-old woman now, I know that it's empowering to speak about money. I know that people who aren't afraid to speak about money are the ones who aren't afraid of it. And so for me now, I've had to kind of change that narrative. And over the last 10 or 15 years, it's been a journey for me to kind of get rid of all those sayings or get rid of that narrative that I grew up with, so that I can educate myself, empower myself, and get myself in a better position when it comes to my finances. So in addition to that, I find that myself personally, I've lived paycheck to paycheck for a lot of my life. And I didn't really realize that I was doing it. I was struggling. I felt like that, the duck with the legs underwater. I was trying to look like that I had everything together, but I was just paddling. It was just like I was drowning when it came to finances. And I know that in the work that I've been doing over the last 3 years or year and a half, working in mining and in the resource sector, there's a lot of money that comes into people's, pockets, into their bank account. But I ask the question when I'm up there, who's a millionaire? And I do sometimes get one or two hands that pop up. But for the most part, it doesn't matter how much money you've got coming in. If you don't know how to manage it, it's not going to stay there. One of the biggest misconceptions about budgeting is that it's difficult. And for me, definitely looking back on my money journey, I would be absolutely shitting myself looking at a spreadsheet. I didn't want to look at my money. I ignored my money. And I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was speaking about finances and somebody was speaking about money and really brought into plain sight for me to acknowledge that actually money is the only thing that is sure. Maths has this plus this is this. And so for me, ignoring my finances is ignoring money, being scared to look at it, making it mean something for me. I know that that's not only my journey and not only my story, but the biggest misconception about money and finances is that it's difficult or it's too hard. The reason why I speak about this is I was in 50 grand's worth of debt. Because I was in 50 grand's worth of debt with the business that I had, it's like I had this smell of desperation. So the clients that I wanted to work with, the people that I wanted to align with were repelled against me because I was so desperate to bring money in, I wasn't aligned with those clients. So what I ended up doing about that, where I made that change, is obviously I was working for myself. I'd been working for myself for the last 2 years. And again, like it was like I was trudging through the mud, whereas the most important thing for me was to drop my pride, my ego, that I had to do it myself. I ended up going and getting a job and creating security for myself. I have this huge desire to help the world and, do the best I possibly can for other people. And in that moment, I wasn't looking after myself. So I had to realize that because I was so desperately trying to help other people, I'd forgotten about myself and I'd gotten into so much debt that I couldn't get myself out of it. So the first thing that I had to do was help myself, put that face mask on myself. From that, I asked for help. And one of the things that stuck out for me was the advice that somebody gave to me was 1% is better than nothing. If you can start paying off your debt, $20 a week, $50 a week, then $100 a week, you're going to pay it off than if you do nothing. So pay attention to your money. Start doing something is better than nothing. So of that debt for me in that time, it took me a year to pay it off. And I just kept on chipping away at it. I got to the point where I could pay $500 off a week, $1,000 off a week. And fast forward to now, I'm paying attention to my money. I'm checking in on it weekly. For me, it's not just about budgeting. It's about being empowered with what I'm doing with my money and speaking to people, being around people who aren't afraid to speak about money. And not only not afraid, but can't wait to impart the wisdom of how they've made money work for them. One of the main reasons I want to talk about this or have this conversation is that, so I was born in Northern England, Burnley, and there's a real class system that's present in Northern England. So mum and dad had, I wouldn't say a chip on their shoulder, but a belief about money that it was evil, didn't grow on trees, we didn't have enough of it. And when they broke up, I remember spending a lot of time in Centrelink lines around other people who didn't have money, who probably also had those feelings about money when we moved to Australia. So for me, what has been really important is to shift and get rid of all of that, those stories that don't matter, and to empower myself so that I can empower the future generations and the family that I'm going to create so that they get a starting line that is a little bit more ahead of where my starting line was. The result of anything and the beauty of it is that I now get to be here having this conversation with you where I feel like I'm on the other side. I remember being at a point where I felt like there was nothing that I could do. I was trapped. I was worthless. I made my money story and what was happening in my bank account mean something about me. And so the beauty of empowering myself is that I now get to have these conversations, and I know that you can be at that point in 50 grand's worth of personal debt, which to some people seems a lot and to other people seems like nothing, to be on the other side, to have that conversation. And over the course of, having this journey and this conversation with you guys on the podcast, I know that I'm just going to get even better and even more empowered and have far more education and conversations around how I can build that for myself and how I can impart that wisdom for other people as well. When we look at what we're taught in school and how much we actually need it, it puzzles me. It frustrates me actually that we're not given that education in school. Why are we not given that education? Why are we not given education around finances when we're going into the workforce? I have a belief that if we had that financial education, we probably wouldn't be doing a lot of the jobs that are needed to have people. If you were empowered financially, you probably wouldn't be doing the job that you're doing. So asking that question of you and asking that question of me, what would you do? Where would you be? What would you be doing if money was no issue? And for me, that's here doing this podcast. It's here having this conversation with you. And what I'm trying to create with this is globally being able to have this conversation with many people. In my teens when I got my first job, it was $5 an hour. I was stoked to get that $5 an hour. And for the household that I grew up in, That money went towards rent. There was stuff going on in the house where they needed financial help to be able to pay rent. But for me, I think I had 2 jobs when I was 15. I was working at the general store and I was working at the local Italian store. And I remember getting tipped, and I remember it being so special when I'd see somebody appreciate the work that I did by giving me a tip. That was personal. I was going to get paid anyway. I was getting a wage from that job. But what I remember appreciating was being a teenager and getting shown appreciation in the form of getting a tip. And do you know what? That means something. So in the form of getting that tip, now even just having that conversation, I don't think I've acknowledged that before, where we often get taught, to work hard. You trade your time for money. It's even, validation from people that if you work hard, you'll get paid more. If you work hard, you'll get a tip. And so for me, that was valuable and it got me to a certain point. But where it stopped being valuable for me was when I didn't kind of acknowledge that actually you don't have to trade your time for money and you can make money work for you outside of being tipped by people and what they feel like you're worth. I don't think any of us are paid what we're worth. We're human beings. When it comes to the pay by the hour, when it comes to, minimum wage, human beings trade their time for money at a really minor pay per hour. And so for me, I had to change around how I felt about myself, my worth, what I felt like I was worth and how I showed up in the workplace, and having those conversations when it came to a pay rise or the jobs that I was going for or the jobs that I was doing. So that is what came out for me and what became important to me. And it's interesting we have that conversation now on having that tip from somebody when I was working in that Italian restaurant. Yeah, I would spend it on alcohol. It meant that I could buy something that I would enjoy. I remember just being flippant with my money, not having education around it. I don't think I saw the value in it at that time. So I would just spend my money. I would tell my 15-year-old self that you are worth everything and more, getting paid that and more. And you show people how you want to be treated. And that's also in the respect of how much you want to be paid. So people who have worth around themselves don't go for jobs that are this amount. They go for jobs that are this amount. And so if I were to be able to speak to my 15-year-old self, it would be that. Like, see yourself, have worth in yourself, and believe that you are worthy of that. I would tell my 15-year-old self about spending that money on alcohol is that, we get an opportunity to make decisions away from the person we want to become or towards the person we want to become. And while I don't regret anything that's happened in life and it's built who I am, given the opportunity again, I probably wouldn't be spending that money on alcohol. I'd be spending that money on personal development. I started my personal development journey at 28. That's 13 years after that time. And so if I could go back, I would say start working on yourself, start working on how you can grow and change the narrative that you grew up in. But the thing is I didn't even know that I had that story going on. So it's first self-awareness. So the advice would be to start paying attention to what's going on in life. Like I said, I don't regret all of the fun that I had, the travel that I went on, the parties that I went to. I don't regret spending that money flippantly. But given the opportunity again, I would probably start investing. I've literally only just started investing and I'm 39 now. I was scared of it. I thought the biggest thing when we're having this conversation is the divide of I thought there was a them and an us, and that I will never be them. And them being people who have money or who were brought up with money. And the biggest thing for me is to acknowledge that that is not true. What is true and what I'm learning about the stories that we're told is that as a little kid, you're born as this like glowing light. You're born as this hopeful, energetic, anything is possible little orb of light. And over life, parental, people around you, school potentially, other people start to dim that light and start to make you believe things that aren't necessarily true, because the world is what we perceive, and the world is based on the things that have happened in our past or the stories that we've been told. So pulling those things off that light and believing and seeing and knowing that actually anything is possible. And the biggest thing is to believe that anything is possible. And then you start to see that it is. The biggest thing in any kind of journey, the biggest thing is looking in the mirror about what I have done or what I'm doing or where I'm being flippant or where I'm being stupid with my finances. Getting sick of your own bullshit and actually making a change is the first thing that I had to do, and that people have to do when they're trying to empower themselves or make a change in their life when it comes to their money or their finances. The beautiful thing about this podcast is that I get to have conversations that I would like to have with people about things that I'm intrigued about. And so for me, having education around finances and having conversations with people who've done the things that I want to do or are doing the things that I would like to be doing is really important. So for me, I'm going to have more of those conversations, and I'm excited that you guys get to, learn alongside me and have those conversations as well. I know that I had a lot of questions around finances and money and have a lot of questions around finance and money, but if anything's coming up with what we're speaking about today, if there's anything that's happened in your life or in your family's life, or there's a way that you want to change how you feel about it, you're stuck, you're living paycheck to paycheck, you feel useless, you feel like you're not providing, you feel the pressure in your life and you want to know how to change that, then send in your questions and hopefully we can get them answered, and hopefully we can see a change in all of our lives. And I can't wait to hear from you guys in the change that gets to make for you. If you enjoyed this episode on the podcast and you want to see it grow and help it reach more people on their journey, maybe they're struggling or maybe they know somebody else who's struggling, I would love if you could review, if you could share with 5 other people so that we can help this podcast reach even more people. I am super excited for the next episode. I can't wait to hear from you all, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. Thanks for joining us on the Resource Podcast. I'm Becky. See you later.